Hey guys, it's Alex and Dan from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who. Last time on Doctor Who, we had the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. What was that one about?
Well, it was this problem in the, I want to say, late 1500s. It's the Catholics and the Protestants in France, and it's all because a Spanish prince, if I recall, Henry of Navarre, who is Catholic, is marrying a Protestant princess, and anyway, there's a whole bunch of people who are killed, and the doctor gets mistaken for somebody else, the abbot of somewhere. And
well, not even that. There just happens to be a guy who looks exactly like the doctor, and Stephen mistakes him for the doctor.
That's it. So, and because Stephen hasn't been there for like the Aztecs and the others, he doesn't understand that Doctor doesn't want to interfere with history, and he's very angry that the doctor let the massacre take place, and so he storms off, only to be literally chased right back in by apparently a new companion. So,
well, okay, so I guess after like, you know, the Daleks' master plan, where they lost Katarina and then they lost Sarah, and I guess Brett too. All these people died, and then they go to the massacre, and all these people still die, and the doctor doesn't do anything. So Stephen, he's done. He wants off. Next stop, and then he goes. Then just some random girl stumbles onto the TARDIS, and then Stephen walks back in, says the police are coming. We got to get out of here. So the doctor just goes and takes this girl too, and that's just that. So,
but apparently she may be a descendant of somebody that we met in the St. Bartholomew's Eve massacre.
Yes, the servant girl.
The servant girl, yeah.
From last episode is apparently, I guess, her ancestor, which is to show that, I guess, she made it out of there okay. So, it was a very depressing episode, especially like the 2-minute montage of just showing all these characters that we knew and how they were being brutally murdered. And then the last 5 minutes, it was really dark, and then it was really goofy. And then we are off to whatever we're doing this time. We still have Stephen, and now we have our new companion, Dodo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the name that we were given for her, so...
I've known several Dee-Dees, but I've never known a Dodo.
This is a complete episode.
Yay!
All four, front to finish. We are completely good this time around. We should enjoy it, because next time, well, most of next episode is missing. It looks like we're kind of going like every other episode is going to be complete for a little while, so...
Well, that'll look good.
Yeah, it's a nice break, especially after like Dalek's master plan and stuff, which were almost all completely missing, so... Yeah, I have no idea what we're going to be doing here. Maybe we're going to drop Stephen off somewhere. With the name The Ark, we did sort of speculate, maybe they go back to Noah's Ark. That would be a horrible time to leave Stephen in.
Yes.
But we have left Vicky and Troy, so...
But that was her choice.
That was her choice, so hopefully they land somewhere decent that Stephen can leave if he still wants to, I guess. I guess that's pretty much that. So
let's hope we get something decent here. The Ark.
Yeah.
This is going to be odd, I'm thinking.
Probably. So let's just go ahead and get right into this episode of Doctor Who. Here we go.
Who can?
Neither of them care about each other.
That's not Noah.
No. It's creative.
How's this for a casting call? We need an actor who can manipulate a fake eye with his tongue.
Yeah, I guess.
The prisoner will be retained at microcell size to be reconstituted in approximately 700 years' time.
Father, anyone can make mistakes. He's not likely to do it again.
My child, we are the guardians of the human race. You know our responsibilities cannot be taken lightly.
I have so many questions.
If that's really in the studio, there's some really interesting stuff going on here.
Yeah. I thought after the Dalek serial they wouldn't have a budget.
Yes, and on top of everything else, it's a jungle without a sky.
Hey, look at that then.
No sky.
Maybe.
No sun, no clouds.
Maybe it's a space ark.
Barely a metal roof.
These are some giant sets.
Yeah.
Commander,
Yes, Santos.
strange report from the jungle. The monoids acquaint us of intruders.
Intruders? But how can that be? How could they have entered?
No idea.
Intruder window.
Surely it's impossible.
Now that was a dad joke.
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Quiet. What's the matter? Are you crying?
Nobody knows he's running.
Just do as he says, Dad. This may be very difficult.
H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds, introducing a common cold into a controlled environment.
It can travel anywhere in time or space.
I don't understand. Experiments to pass through the fourth dimension were undertaken in the 27th segment of time. They were unsuccessful. How could anything so cruel?
I told you before.
Well-
the doctor's the one who'll tell you what you want to know.
Well, clearly in the future they succeeded in making time travel and they came back. Thus how time travel works.
10 million years?
When do you expect your journey to end?
Not for a long time.
It's the farthest they've ever
Neither
gone.
I nor my daughter Miriam.
Never finished design. Hey, that's gear.
That's very Sumerian.
All that carry on.
Don't take a long time to get through that. Right, did we like quadruple the budget we had? Because this episode's going nuts.
What's happened to the temperature?
Commander,
Nobody going to help the old man?
Yeah.
Commander,
Sorry, I'm distracted by those
He has a
seats.
strange fever.
The man's got Dodo's cold, that's all.
Oh, no. These people, this generation, have never experienced the common cold. For the simple reason it was wiped out many generations ago before they were born. They have no resistance to it.
But shouldn't there be
I
a
don't quite know, I don't know.
vaccine
It might
that
be
would...
fatal. We should be to blame.
I invoke the special galactic law against them. Hold them, take them into custody, and later they will be made to suffer for the crime that they have committed.
Listen to us!
Take them away!
You would think the Doctor has something on his TARDIS that would take care of
Well.
this. Now, why does Dodo get top billing over Steven?
Alphabetical?
I don't know.
Alphabetical by last name? That's the only thing I can think of. Because, yeah, he should... Anyway, there's always the one guy. There's always that Tegana in there who just immediately, like, nope, they're evil. I'm going to take over and show that they're evil.
Yeah.
So,
Well, here's the thing. Like you've commented several times, this episode, although obviously it's just the setup, it's all about the sets because there really wasn't that much action.
yeah.
We've learned that this is an Ark carrying the human race and the
Yeah.
monoids.
It's a pretty simple episode overall.
But it's just all in the gigantic sets. And what did they do? Rent an elephant? Now there's the call that the props
Yeah.
guy has to make. Hello, London Zoo. I'd like to rent an elephant, if you might. Send me a couple of toucans and the possible monitor and iguanas.
Yeah. Now, I was starting to think, like, okay, because we're getting close to the second Doctor. And I do remember, okay, there were some bigger sets, like when we would watch, like, Tomb of the Cybermen and stuff like that. But this is just all over the place, are giant, giant sets. And even, like, different ways of, like, filming. Like, the camera is, like, moving a lot more, and...
There's aerial shots.
Yeah, there's a lot of aerial shots. There was one point, it was when the guy was talking about, the entire human race is stored in these, cabinets and stuff. when he kept talking and it just panned over all those cabinets. It's like, that's not a shot that Doctor Who would normally do. So, I don't know. Now, I guess, because it's been a while since we've had a complete episode. In fact, I think the last 100% complete episode that we had was the Time Meddler. So, like, after that, we had, Galaxy 4 and stuff like that. But even those episodes, because we would have, like, one or two, like, complete episodes in those serials. But those were not on this scale. So I'm wondering what happened that jumped them up so much. Yeah. Because this is definitely a very high budget for just all these sets and stuff.
Well, maybe, again, we're into the third year. Maybe the popularity of the show has really started to grow.
Yeah.
Because those first 2 years, remember, it was kind of iffy. But if it has caught on, especially with the Daleks and everything, you've got a lot of advertisers. You can pump that money in. The only other thing I can think of is perhaps the BBC had some of this from something else that they were able to then, basically tell the writers, hey, we've got these big sets. Can you incorporate them into whatever it is that you're doing? So
yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, because, that could also work because, like, the new characters that we have, these humans and the monoids, their costumes are all right. Like, the monoid's like, okay, yeah, it was cool when, you see he's like, oh, he's got the eyeball where his mouth should be, and it's like, okay, that's weird, but whatever, that's kind of creative. But they don't really, like, show that. Like, you can't see it very well when it's just a normal shot of them. And then the people, they just got these weird, like, tunics on.
Yeah, and that, again, for millions of years in the future, that seems highly impractical. If you're going to walk around in a steel structure like that the entire time, I don't want to say pants would be required, but they would certainly be more comfortable than that. Yeah,
so it could be that they just got these sets. So that doesn't explain where the elephant came from, though, because that... And they only... You can tell they only had it for that one shot. It's like, okay, we just have this one shot. Let's get it. Okay, we got the actors. They're not saying any dialogue next to this elephant because we can't do multiple takes or anything. So let's just go in, have them pet the elephant, leave. All right, we got it in there. Now we can say, the magazines can put in... They have a live elephant in this episode. So... now Dodo is starting to actually remind me a lot of Susan and also a lot of Vicky, and I'm starting to wonder, it's like, did they just have this like on lockdown? Like, okay, this is exactly the young girl companion that we're going to have.
Yeah, it strikes me that's the template, that because that way, unlike the Doctor who's very cautious, she's the one who says, oh, here, let me go outside, and then went, oh, no, you can't. Oh, wait, where are we now? So, yeah, that seems to be the specific function of these characters, is to get them into whatever trouble or, episode that we have, because they don't know any better.
But that seems to be mainly bouncing off of Steven instead of the Doctor, though I would kind of imagine that that's because maybe they want to reduce how much the Doctor is really doing so that Hartnell doesn't have to do so much in this. But she definitely... I guess her, like, sort of getting into trouble, especially with Steven, I don't know why that reminds me a bit more of Susan than it reminds me of Vicky. I guess just because Vicky kind of got over that, especially after Ian and Barbara left, and then Steven was the one getting in trouble, and she was having to deal with him. So I guess that's also the thing, is that every companion, when they show up, they will cause trouble, and then we get a new companion, and then they have to make sure that they don't cause trouble, because it's been the same thing throughout all of them, basically. So, and 10 million years in the future, I think that's the furthest we've ever gone. And with what they were saying about how they had to leave Earth because it was about to be, consumed and it was dying, it's interesting because there's another episode with the 11th Doctor where they basically say the same thing, where it's like, oh, well, we left Earth on, like, these different space whale ships, and, like, every country has its own giant space whale that they travel on. And it was, like, a very interesting episode, but it kind of reminds me of that, so I'm wondering if I went back to that episode, if maybe they referenced this at some point. So,
could be.
I invoke the special galactic law against them. Hold them, take them into custody, and later they'll be made to answer for the crime that they have committed.
Listen to him.
Take them away!
Do you think every time they cast this particular character like that no matter what actor it is, they always get excited, like, yes, I get to be the over-the-top one.
Like all of us. In which case, it was pointless leaving.
Now, minor thing, especially considering you and me, the galactic commander there looks to be in his 60-somethings, but the girl looks like she's in her early 20s. Now, again, for you and me, that's okay. For the 1960s, that would have been very odd.
Well,
see the zipper in the back of his suit there.
That's another victim.
and they want you to focus on the sign language they're clearly doing.
Oh, they have to wear masks during a pandemic.
I was about to say.
But if we were to agree that the Doctor and his friends could, what is the value in expelling them from the spaceship?
None at all. If Maniac and my daughter can see that, why can't they?
It's interesting that the guy holds no power.
I just had news of another disaster.
Doctor, something is wrong with Stephen.
That's not a cold.
If he succeeds in curing him, then I will set aside the verdict of the court. Now, proceed.
Okay, so he does have power. That's good.
Here we are. Now all we have to do is to wait and watch. Come along.
I vaguely remember that patch with it had like micro needles on it. They just placed it on your skin, and it punctured your skin just very little.
Don't hear my child as you say. I just sat and did.
Well, we must be off. Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, my dear.
Goodbye, Doctor. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, dear.
Doctor,
You know,
for the
there's
fact that I misjudged
2 more
you,
episodes left.
Judged you, I'm sorry.
Maybe they meet them again in 700 years' time? Because they are out of here. Beep, 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 beep.
They finished the statue.
He's got a single eye.
Yeah. Maybe the monoids took over?
Now Zentos gets top billing.
You know what, I'll just assume that after William Hartnell, it's open season on who gets billed when.
Now, the girl that plays the daughter, Kate Newman, she looks very familiar, but again, I can't place her. And I'll go ahead and say this rather than wait till the end. And you know, because although you didn't take my class, this is what happened in the New World. When the Europeans came over, they and the Africans and the Asians had been exchanging these diseases for thousands of years and had built up an immunity. But once the Europeans began landing in North America, the natives, especially with smallpox, had absolutely no resistance to it because from the time the Beringia land bridge sank back under the water, they had been isolated from the rest of the world. Most historians and scientists now think that between the year 1500 and 1600, 90% of all native deaths were from diseases, not from natural causes or war with the Europeans. And that's essentially what appears to have happened here, is that they've literally wiped out an entire civilization, or at least a part of it, because the end there was the monoid statue, or what we think may be the monoid statue.
But the monoids seem to be more vulnerable to the cold, because they seem to be dying quicker than anyone else. So, I do like the idea of, we pretty much got through the plot. Like, okay, we're good. The Tegana guy, we're good with him now. It's like, all right, let's move on. But now we're moving on 700 years later when they're about to land, basically. But now there's another problem. And, you kind of wonder, like, okay, well, how did the TARDIS get here? Because the TARDIS, we can't control where it goes. But that does still go along with, like what they say in future episodes, where it's like the TARDIS always takes the Doctor where he needs to go.
Yeah.
So,
and if you consider, even though he seemed to come right back to the same spot, the spot has moved.
Yeah,
because the ship has gone, 700 years into the future, and obviously millions of miles. So it has actually set down in another place, just in the same spot in the other place.
Right. So so that is an interesting idea, and it also, because I was also wondering, like, okay, we have all these huge sets and stuff, but this is only 4 episodes. But I also like now that it's 4 episodes, but it's kind of 2 different like stories within that. Like it kind of feels like a modern episode where they do just a part 1 and part 2. So even though it's just a normal 4-parter for this series, so
That looks like a monoid.
But the Guardian's working as a kind of servant.
Yes, he's not the only one who's doing that.
looks like Skynet rose up.
We conquered, and you obey. And these strangers, they will also obey. Now you will come with us.
Where?
To our leader.
This was a recent revolution. It'd be funny if this was like 3 weeks ago or something. Like right at the end, they decided to take over.
I trust that their return won't give you any ideas, Maharis.
No, I'm content to obey.
Where does he eat?
Who told you?
One of the subject guardians whispered it as he passed by the door just now.
Since they have an entirely new cast for the humans, do you think they had the humans from last episode now as the monoids?
Could be.
Like the Tegana guy is now the monoid villain?
You named this ship the Ark. They never heard the name till I used it.
And you brought a strange
Instant potatoes.
Then the lock secured it.
Of course. Take no notice of him.
I think the container behind it actually said new potatoes on it.
Out.
Ah, another jungle. More invisible creatures.
Still no sign of life. Perhaps the audio space research that told us of the refusions was wrong.
Let us return to the launcher and send the message back to the Ark.
It was a long time ago. They could have died since then.
I will challenge them like this.
Oh, no!
They must be in this place somewhere.
As your friend said, I'm here, in the room, with you.
A fission device. I had it made secretly, and it is ready to be detonated at any time.
Did he say
But
fission?
where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, the bomb's in the statue.
It's a good hiding place.
Excellent one.
We had a shape and form something like you. Then there was a galaxy accident, a giant solar flare. Now, we no longer have a being that you can see or recognize.
So a solar flare happened, and now they're just non-corporeal beings.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
When we first arrived, we exited. Two, are you there?
It's quite the power.
But what if they don't come? What if they decide to find another planet?
Well, in that case, we shall just have to stay here.
Okay. And that's part 3.
Well, again, not a whole lot of action. I mean, it's a great story, but other than the humans, you got a very kind of slow-moving, sloth-like creature and a bunch of people who are invisible.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. I mean, seriously, you want to talk about one that we could have watched in retcon or recons? Because you can't see them and you can't watch them move. So I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm enjoying it, but it's. Ow.
It's nice that like it is 2 stories, because I think that's what's making this at least more interesting. Because if it was the first story where that was 4 episodes, or this story that was 4 episodes, like, they wouldn't work as 4 episodes, but put them as 2 different, like, sets of 2 episodes. Those really work. So, like, I'm watching this, like, you know, I'm almost feeling like, okay, so how long is it going to be until we figure this out? And I was like, oh, wait, I have to keep reminding myself, no, we're going to figure this all out next episode, because next episode's the last one of this episode.
Yeah.
So...
Interesting, they talked about the viral mutation, since that's literally what we're going through right now.
No.
You know, there have been other coronaviruses, but this one has mutated to a point where it's like Ebola. We have no cure for it. We barely have any treatment for it, and it's one of those things that when we do get a vaccine for it, not that it will disappear, but we'll have it under control until the next novel coronavirus comes along.
Yeah.
Thor is beginning to question the wisdom of your leadership.
Don't worry.
There is another problem. None of us appear to be females.
Only now, after thousands of years, do they realize they don't remember how they were reproducing all this time.
That is why you destroyed the launcher.
Here, we've always known peace, never war or conflict.
You're not the only ones.
Really?
Like that.
You just
The
blew
Guardians.
up that pod
You know, the humans who travel
without a
in the
second
spaceship.
thought. Yeah, this is why humans are always the best in sci-fi, is they always have peripheral vision.
We haven't much time. You could have gone with them.
They don't need me. You don't know the Ark. You'll need me to help you find the bomb.
Let's try behind that central scan.
We're not going to leave Steven here, are we?
Seems like every time that some person from the episode takes an interest in one of the companions, that's when they begin to leave them behind.
Well...
You have had my last warning. Do as I say.
So if they speeded that up a little bit.
Maybe. Gotta hobble away.
More like a waddle. Run away!
But what about the monoids?
The way they were fighting, there won't be many of them left. Splendid, come on.
Maybe someday the show will get the budget for lasers.
Just 3 years later, in Star Trek, they would have visual effects of light beams.
Well, not even 3 years later. This is 1966 by now.
Oh, yeah. So.
It's moving.
Yes, well, let's hope the movement doesn't set it off.
Again, that was quite the solar flare that they experienced.
A long time ago, your ancestors accepted the responsibility for the welfare of these monoids. They were treated like slaves. So no wonder when they got the chance, they repaid you in kind.
Needs a haircut.
Unless you learn to live together, there is no future for you on Refusis.
We're landing now, Doctor. Good. That means the gravitational bearing must have rectified itself.
Bumblebee outfit, Stephen?
Bless you.
Oh, Doctor, don't say you're catching a cold now.
Doctor?
Doctor, you vanished.
What? Oh, nonsense, child. Nonsense.
You have?
We're in grave danger. This is some form of attack.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Well, I think I slightly know what they're doing now. Hold on. Visibility. Okay. If I kept talking, I wouldn't have spelled that correctly. I actually remember, I think someone said that there was a serial where the Doctor was invisible for a little while. And apparently, I guess the showrunner at the time or someone was actually planning to switch out the actor there, to just write off William Hartnell, so when the Doctor came back, it would just be a different actor. And I think, because when I looked at the schedule we have, I believe that is the exit of our current showrunner, who only lasted for a few episodes, honestly, not very many.
Yeah.
So, it's possible that was it, because I know people in the comments have also said that there had been some conflict between the showrunner and William Hartnell. So, it's possible that maybe he wanted to just write Hartnell out completely. But we obviously know that doesn't happen, but it is soon still that the Doctor will regenerate.
Yeah.
So
we've got just 6 serials left.
Yeah, just about. So,
because doesn't he leave in the 10th planet?
I believe it's the 10th planet.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, we will see.
Yeah. So I think that's actually it. Is that this is, I guess, sort of the original point where they wanted to switch out the actor. So, which that would be a very that would not be a good way of doing that. Just suddenly, like, oh, he's visible again, and he's just a completely different actor, despite the fact that he still has the same voice while being invisible. So,
and it strikes me that if that was what they were trying to do, would they try to find an actor who kind of looked like Hartnell, or would they just completely change him?
Yeah, I would think, especially because the voice is still the same, that they would just try to find another actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be very odd. So,
it's completely off the subject here. We've been watching the BBC's Sherlock production, and I was reminded last night there was a scene in the Abominable Bride where Watson and Holmes were on the train, and I got up. I have a book called the Sherlock Holmes Scrapbook, and showed the family that picture. But then I was noticing that the foreword to the scrapbook was written by Peter Cushing, who apparently also played Sherlock Holmes in the late 50s or 60s. And Peter Cushing was also the Doctor here, so that's a bizarre little connection.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if he were available, although at the time he was still a rather big movie star, maybe they would have tried to get Peter Cushing to take over the role of the Doctor.
Maybe. I think I heard that was also maybe a consideration, but I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering.
But I'll tell you, one of my favorite actors from this time period, late 50s, early 60s, who would have fit this really well, that would have made, to me, a great Doctor would have been Vincent Price. I don't know if you've ever seen him in some of those old horror movies, but he is just that wonderful mix of very stern and very, scientific and very scholarly, and also being the dotty old man. Vincent Price did a lot of comedy, and in the this would have been the mid 80s here in Oklahoma City when we were we did one of the first semi-professional theaters here, and we were getting in some very famous people to do guest shots. They brought in Chad and Jeremy, strangely enough, a British rock group, to do a play called Pump Boys and Dinettes. And we actually tried to get Vincent Price to play Ebenezer Scrooge for us when we did A Christmas Carol. But he was not available. He was in pretty ill health at that time. And although he got better, he wasn't available. We were never able to get him before he passed away. So
Now, and of course, that's just going off of the sort of performance that Hartnell has given as the first Doctor. Because, it would be interesting if they actually did get Peter Cushing to replace Hartnell, but Peter Cushing had a very different performance as the Doctor than William Hartnell did. So it's interesting, thinking of that, and then also thinking of Vincent Price, and knowing that we're eventually going to end up with Patrick Troughton, who has the complete opposite of William Hartnell.
But again, that may be what is happening here. That who is this guy, John Wiles?
Yeah.
Maybe wanted to have continued the Hartnell style performance, whereas what's the producer's name? Verity Lambert's boss.
Sidney Newman.
Maybe Sidney Newman is the one who said, no. In order to make this work, we have to have somebody who is literally not William Hartnell, somebody who is the opposite of William Hartnell, and that's what they ultimately went with.
Yeah, it could be that, because keeping with because over the past, few serials, we've had this sort of like, okay, things have gotten a lot darker, especially with like the Daleks' master plan, and then into the massacre. It's like, okay, we've got some really dark stuff here, but it's like, okay, well, we know this can't last. Like, we can't just be entering a really dark period of Doctor Who, because eventually we're going to get Patrick Troughton, who's the goofiest guy other than Matt Smith to play the Doctor, So, yeah. Now that also reminds me of An Adventure in Space and Time, when they say like, okay, yeah, Bill, we're thinking of hiring someone new to take over, and when he asks who it is, they say Patrick Troughton. He's like, yeah, that's a good choice, even though they have to like know, or maybe they would think like, is he going to do that same sort of performance, or is he doing his own thing? And eventually he does do his own thing.
Yeah.
So it just seems it's very interesting to sort of think about that. Yeah. That now we are in sort of the period where they are thinking that they're going to need to replace William Hartnell at some point. Yeah. So yeah. So for the episode itself, it was a good episode.
Yeah.
I do like, again, that it is basically two separate stories. That the first two episodes are, the cold, and we have to, cure it and everything. And then the second episode is, honestly, a bit more standard, where it's like, okay, we have to defeat the monoids and, restore peace and everything. And here's our, other alien friends that'll help. But they work because they are just two separate stories that are only taking 2 episodes each. Yeah. The only thing about that is, when you put those 2 stories back to back, that also still makes it feel long, because we started the story, we finished, then we started a new story, and then we have to finish that one, and then we're done. So
this just occurred to me. The name of the aliens, the monoids. Now, I realize they're doing mono because, the single eye, but surely there was some other, the monoptoids or monopticons or something, so that we would understand it was single eye. But that's just a minor thing. It's just monoids seems rather strange.
Yeah.
And why did their crotches go down to their knees so that they had to waddle? I mean, I realized they needed to move slowly, but it was an odd sort of thing that these creatures appeared on Earth and said, "Hey, we'll help you get to the new planet," and they're just. I'm not exactly sure what their physical structure added to. Why couldn't they have been just another humanoid type race? So I don't know. That's just throwing that out there.
Well, and also too, just their designs are very interesting. It's like, okay, you've got the single eye. You've also got this just giant poofy hair. I was like, okay, this is either something that would be in Dr. Seuss or like Lovecraft. Like, that's what they look like, honestly.
Now, I'll tell you, and I'm just going to throw it out there and let everybody else discuss it. But for a brief moment, because of the incredibly short hair of the humans and the longish shoulder-length hair of the monoids, I was thinking Cavaliers and Roundheads. All right? So, if you guys want to talk Cavaliers and Roundheads out there, this is the British Civil War of the 1600s. Discuss.
All right. So, let's see. It's also interesting that they just say, it's like, yeah, these guys just showed up, like, because their planet was dying, and then they went to Earth, but then Earth was dying, and it's like, okay, I guess we all have to leave now. And now they're going to this place. I hope this place lasts a bit longer, because clearly the monoids are not having good luck finding planets, So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's also odd in the first 2 episodes where they can't speak, although they can communicate with the sign language.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't understand. That doesn't add anything. I mean, it's an interesting feature, but it doesn't add anything to the overall story. It doesn't say, this is the reason we rose up against the humanoids, because they kept us because we couldn't speak. I don't know. It just seems like an odd choice.
Well, because they also say, like, they created the bands in order to allow them to talk. But the humans created that, maybe a couple hundred years ago. And then somewhere along the line, they were just like, we'll enslave you instead. And it's like, okay, you guys seem to be fine. It's not like, because they were not like really treated cruelly. Like, I guess they were, serving them, but it also seemed like, I don't know. I don't want to say like, well, you kind of signed up for that, but it's like, I guess they just weren't coexisting very well.
And again, this is you may remember this from the world history class you took from me. One of the things that I've never understood in the Old Testament, the Jewish people were held as slaves for 400 years under the Egyptians, and when Moses finally leads them back to Canaan, and they enter the land, one of the first things that they do is to make slaves of the people living there. And I've never understood, how is it that people who have been slaves can then turn around and enslave other people? And maybe that's something that they were trying to subtly hint at here. I don't know about that. But why, if the monoids had felt that they were slaves, other than revenge, which I don't know, that just seems kind of odd.
I mean, this also reminds me, I just finished watching the Hunger Games movies, and these are very vague spoilers for the Hunger Games movies if you haven't seen them, I guess. But spoilers, the good guys win at the end. And
quelle surprise.
Yeah. And the whole thing with the Hunger Games is that people are forced into these Hunger Games. Kids are forced to kill each other for entertainment and stuff. And at the end, there are people that are like, well, maybe we should force them into Hunger Games too. But sort of our protagonists are like, no, we can't do that. We can't just be cruel to them because they were cruel to us.
Yes.
So it is sort of the same thing, that it's like the monoids really aren't that much better.
Yeah, and they do say there at the end, the Refusians basically say, if you can't live together, you can't stay here.
Yeah.
So I mean, but took a long time to get there.
Yeah. So it's good on the Refusians to be like, hey, we're gonna watch over you guys. We're gonna take care of you. We're gonna make sure you actually coexist. Yeah. So,
and for what this is worth, the planet is called Refusia, which leads to two interpretations: the word refuse, which means they're not going to be allowed to stay there, or, in a more British pronunciation, refuse, which is garbage. So this is either the planet that will not allow you to come in, or it's the garbage planet.
I mean, it was an alright planet. Like it looked like every other jungle we've ever been to, except they built a house. So I don't know.
In fact, it may have been some of the same jungles we've seen before.
Probably. Like, we went on and on about, oh, the sets are getting bigger. It's like, I'm sure they were reusing a lot of the jungles, though.
Yeah.
So yeah. Let's see. We had the Space Ark, which was interesting, and the whole thing of, we miniaturized. They really didn't use the miniaturization as much as I thought they would.
Yeah.
When they first they basically just showed it at the beginning to establish that was a thing. And it's like, okay, so they miniaturized the entire human race and put them in cabinets, but there's a certain group of people that, live and die and have, children to watch over them. Of course, then I thought, well, wait, wouldn't it make more sense to live for a certain time until you're like 40, and then you get miniaturized, and then you have replacements there until they turn 40, and then they get... That way you don't have to die on this voyage.
I mean, that's a variation that we're going to see later in... I mean, I kept thinking this is Disney's WALL-E or Pixar's WALL-E.
Yeah.
There's a movie that came out just a couple of years ago with Chris Pratt and who's the girl from Hunger Games? Jennifer Lawrence, called Passengers. Yeah. And there was a movie, this would have been early 70s. This would have been just before Star Wars. I can't remember what it was called. I want to say it was Dark Star, but that's not it. But it was about this gigantic basic ark out in space, and there's the forest pod and the city pod and that sort of thing. And in the end, something very horrible happens to it. I'll probably remember it later. But anyway, just so this humans flying off into space to find a new home is a very common theme.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting too because they specifically say that the entire human race from when they left is still there. They're still alive technically, and they will be brought back like cryosleep basically. But that's sort of like the only story to ever do it like that. It's more like on WALL-E or even later episodes of Doctor Who, where it's like, well, no, we've just continued living, and eventually our descendants will get to wherever that place is, you know? So, so it's just odd. It's like, okay, you specifically have a way to make sure that all the humans make it to this place, yet these specific guardians will still have to just live and die, and most of them will never get to this new planet. Yeah. So,
are we overthinking this?
Yeah, obviously. We did say that it's 10 million years in the future, which is the furthest we've gone so far.
Yeah. We've gone a couple of thousand years, but not a million. We've gone 65 million years in the past when we watched Jamie accidentally blow a hole in the earth.
Adric. You always forget Adric.
Adric.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, that's true. And it's funny because, you know, there are episodes where... there are episodes in the future where, like, they go to... I think actually one of the first Eccleston episodes is they go to the destruction of the Earth, which is 5 million years in the future. So I guess they go there, like, right after the humans, you know, in here leg it. So, so that's kind of interesting. But they also go... There's probably too many episodes where the Doctor accidentally goes to the end of the universe, just right at the end... And he's gone there like 4 times in the past like 8 seasons, and it's like, okay, man, you gotta quit coming here. So,
the restaurant at the end of the universe.
Yeah,
I love those books.
Let's see. We had the trial. Stephen was having to defend them, which, again, you know, it might have been better to have the Doctor do that, but I guess Stephen, you know, it worked out well enough.
Well, I think they needed to do that so that Stephen would become ill, because the Doctor then needed to cure him.
Yeah, so, I guess that's true.
But so I kept wondering why not the Doctor. But then after he started sweating so profusely, I went, okay, it's because they need him to get sick and the Doctor to cure him. So
which that cold did not affect Dodo the way it affected the rest of even Stephen. Like, you know, he was completely down and just completely sweating, but she was
okay. But it was a common virus in her day. Stephen is from the future. So it would affect him because he had never caught it either. It doesn't affect the Doctor because he's not human. And then, so, I mean, I thought that was actually a rather subtle way of saying, you know, here's this poor girl who's got a sneeze, which is, again, this is the same thing with the Europeans and the Native Americans. The Europeans thought, oh, I've got a cold, no big deal. And then suddenly, you know, 1 million Native Americans start dying. Yeah. It's like, what's going on here? Why are they all dying? And it wouldn't be until later when the European Americans began to understand what it was, and then, one of the worst parts of American history, we actually began to weaponize it. You know, the United States government, the Army, began to send blankets from smallpox wards out to various tribes on the plains and said, here's our gift to you, hoping that the natives would catch the smallpox and die so that the Army wouldn't have to come in and kill them in battle. So, it's a sad part of American history.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought that Stephen also wouldn't, like, have the resistance like Dodo does.
Yeah.
Because I was also thinking, it's like, you know, they cure Stephen and then they cure the Elder Guardian or whatever, but they never show curing her. And I was like, well, if you have this, like, just do a little thing, you know, while she's just up and about, so that way she just doesn't have it anymore. Yeah. So, I hope those non-corporeal beings are immune to it. I mean, they've got, you know, they can blow up ships randomly and carry statues, but they might be able to sneeze still.
But yeah, like I said, though, that's a nod. In that first episode, it said it's a nod to H.G. Wells. Yeah. Because, you know, the Martians invade the Earth and are literally destroying the entire planet, and they're brought down by the common cold. Because on Mars, they had never had this particular little virus, and it just runs through them and kills them all.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, spoilers for those of you who haven't read or seen the movies.
It's okay. I mean, we're spoiling that. I'm spoiling Hunger Games. It's all fine. We'll just spoil everything.
I'm a big fan of H.G. Wells and of Jules Verne. Read those a lot when I was, you know, in fact in England. I told you this before. Very first book I ever bought on my own. I bought it in a bookstore in Bury St. Edmunds, and it is I don't want to say leather bound. It's probably an imitation leather bound H.G. Wells' First Men in the Moon, and I bought it in 1965, and I still have it there in the office. So.
And we should also say Rosebud is a sled while we're at it. I've never seen Citizen Kane. Have you?
It's boring.
Oh, okay.
They say it's a great movie, but it's just...
They say it's the greatest movie.
It is not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it is not.
Which, that's all I know is just Rosebud is a sled. I don't know what that means, but that's what I know, so...
I'll spoil it for you after we're off the air.
All right. When the doctor was making the cure, it also reminded me of the Sensorites when Ian was sick, and he just like, all right, let's do this, and science it, and here's the aliens that I'm working with and stuff. So it did kind of remind me of that, just with Steven this time.
Yeah, I was thinking that they had done something similar to that, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah. Also, I noticed there was one point where Steven was sitting down, and I was like, oh, wait, I've seen this shot before, because that's the shot that they use in, like, Galaxy 4 in the recons and stuff.
I remember that now.
Yeah. That's... And I remember it's like, oh, yeah, he's wearing that specific shirt, too. It's like, okay, that's where it's from. Because, again, this is one of the few complete episodes since the Time Meddler, so this is where they got that actual shot.
Yeah.
That makes the most sense, actually. Well, it's a good thing they didn't take any shots from whatever shirt he's wearing now, that weird striped shirt.
Again, that's a very 60s. In fact, they wore them right up until the early 70s. Of course, I never wear horizontal stripes. If I do wear stripes, I wear vertical stripes because of the supposed slimming effect, because, I'm, roughly the size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah, that's why I wear black, too, a lot. Black it's very slimming, so... It's also why I try, like, in videos to... I try to do this, because it makes me look thinner if I sort of lean... If I do this, it doesn't help at all. So, let's see. 700 years later, again, that was pretty... That was very interesting. You could speculate, okay, well, maybe the TARDIS specifically brought them here, or it's just a coincidence that they found this place, found this ship 700 years later, But I like that, it sort of breaks up the formula because, again, it's basically two separate stories, but still just the normal 4 episodes. So,
now, one thing. I understand that the statue had been built to represent a man. And it was obviously the monoids then who finished it. But the monoid head only had the eye, and then it had some kind of hat on. We never saw any of the monoids wearing a hat.
Yeah.
And the statue didn't show the hair either. So it seems kind of odd that their one alteration is just showing the single eye and not the rest of the head.
Maybe they couldn't figure out how to do the rest of the hair. It's like okay, we only had enough material for the actual human, and it's like, well, just sort of carve out an eye, and it's like, it's good enough. We'll just leave it. So. Probably would have taken them more time than they had to figure out how to do the rest of it.
The non-artistic monoids.
Yeah. So, of course, we did see the one monoid that was wearing a mask, which that had to be... I mean, it already has to be uncomfortable to wear the monoid, mask over your own face. Then to wear another mask on top of that, which is clamping down all the monoid hair. It's like, that's got to be funny. But even the monoids would wear a mask, so
yes,
that's a lesson to all you guys out there.
Wear your mask.
Wear your mask. So, let's see. There was the revolution. The monoids rose up. I still think it would be funny if it's like, oh, after all this time, we finally rose up. When was this? Like 3 weeks ago. It's like, oh, well, okay then. Let's see. We had the planets with the non-corporeal beings that... a solar flare came, they lost their bodies, they can blow up ships and carry statues, but alright, and they were nice enough to build houses for the people.
Yeah.
That
we knew you were coming, so we decided to build these structures for you. Well, I mean, that's very polite of them.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting, too, they show up and, they don't see anyone at first, and they say it's like, oh, well, maybe we were given false information. It's like, well, at the very least, it's been 700 years, probably several thousand years since the humans contacted these people. It's like a lot of stuff could have happened since then.
Yeah.
So unless they've had steady contact with them since then, which would make sense, but they never said that. So who knows? Like, maybe like thousands of years ago, it's like, okay, the humans are on their way. Let's build these houses. And then thousands of years pass. It's like, hope these houses are still good enough.
Well, you hope the houses are not the houses from 1,000 years ago, because if you could imagine, all right, we're now in the year 2020. Can you imagine houses from the year 1020, you know? If you go back that far, I mean, this is still somewhat the low Middle Ages. I mean, we're just starting to move into the middle part of the Middle Ages. So, there's no running water, there's no indoor toilet, there's no electricity, no heat or anything other than fireplaces. So how much different would the humanoids expect their housing to be 700 years later, especially since they are not the originals.
And how, like, do the non-corporeal beings know what humanoids need in a house? Like, maybe it'd be a good idea to land the Ark and then, make sure all the houses are good before we fully move in. Yeah. We'll wait a little bit before we drop the elephant off. So, which that was still funny. They just had the one shot of the monoid like petting the elephant while it was just laying there like eating hay or whatever, and it's like, that's got to be a fun acting job.
But I wonder, the thing I thought about that is, were they trying to say that the animals had also contracted the cold?
I don't know.
Because they were holding the one guy, one of the monoids was also holding one of the lizards, and it was it was kind of stiff. I don't know if it had died or if they were. So that whole sequence there led me to believe that it wasn't just infecting the humans, but it was infecting the animals as well.
Maybe. Let's see. We had the bomb. Again, it's like, I understand the whole thing of like, oh, well, we want to get rid of the humans and it'll be our planet and stuff. It's like, I'd still keep the Ark, especially if, like let's say this planet starts dying. You might want to get out of there. Like your first planet died, like Earth died. This planet, I know what you're thinking, third time's the charm, but it might not be. So,
yeah, keep a car out there in the garage just in case.
Yeah. And then I guess the last thing is the Doctor is invisible now. So, I guess that means it's an easy acting job for Hartnell if all he's doing is giving lines. But yeah, that is very strange. I'm very curious. And of course, in the Invisible episode for the Doctor, most of that episode is actually going to be missing. So only part 4 of next episode is going to be complete. So
the Celestial Toymaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds a little funky. So
sounds vaguely DC Comics. Didn't they have a Toymaker?
Yeah. The Toymaker also appears on Supergirl with Windshot. I think that was his name. Anyway. Yeah. But yeah.
But didn't Mark Hamill play it in the most recent version on the DC stuff?
No, you're thinking of the Trickster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's Mark Hamill.
Trickster, Joker, Toymaker.
Yeah, the just weird people, weird villains that the superheroes have to fight. So yeah, I'm very curious to see how the Doctor being invisible is going to affect anything, and why. And again, we kind of already know that it's like, okay, well, this was the original idea to write Hartnell off the show and get a new actor, but it still seems very odd. It makes me wonder if that was the original intention, who came in and stopped that?
Yeah.
So the only thing I could think is probably Cindy Newman, because I would think he's the one who has the final say on everything. Yeah. So
if you're the executive producer, you make all the decisions.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. Just watching that episode and also seeing what the comments are going to be for that episode. So I guess that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right, then I guess we're pretty much done here. So with that all being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.